the way in which we framed the South Asian security puzzle really bothers me. As it presently stands, we talk about staying in Afghanistan, among other reasons, to stabilize Pakistan. Of course, there are several other reasons that are Afghan-specific. But whenever I say that our priorities are reversed, I'm usually given the usual formulation. If you care about Pakistan, then you need to care about what happens in Afghanistan. And I'm actually going to argue that this vector of causality is perversely in reverse. Even if you took away Pakistan, this is not to say that Afghanistan doesn't have enormous challenges. It certainly does. But I think we can make a strong case that Pakistan's strategic calculus vis-a-vis its neighborhood in many ways overdetermines the insecurity that will persist in Afghanistan. And I'm not convinced that this counterinsurgency effort, as it's been defined and then subsequently redefined under Obama, is really much better when you actually look at the outcomes. So what was clear, hold, build under Obama, as we know, has become clear, hold, build, and transfer. But if you look structurally at each of those steps, we still come up with the basic problem of math, right? It's true that we've had an increase in troops, but this is still an economy of force operation, right? Petraeus, the author of FM 324, he now knows it for real because now he owns it. We don't have the numbers to operationalize the doctrine that he himself has written, right? We do the math. It's between 400 and 500,000. We're absolutely nowhere near that number. And I'd like to pick up something that General Nicholson said because I think it actually merits significant attention being paid to it. When General McChrystal put out his interim commander's assessment in August of 2009, everyone picked up on one thing, and that was the troop increase. How many troops we have, what the troops do. No one picked up on the other very clear issue that he identified with such specificity, and that was the civilian contribution, where civilian contribution not only meant international civilians, but it also specifically meant having an Afghan partner dedicated to providing clean governance, dealing with corruption, and all the stuff that we don't need to rehearse again because we've heard it repeatedly. And within weeks of that report being released, we also saw election fraud on an industrial strength. And yet what everyone focused on in that damned commander's interim assessment report was the troops. You couldn't get a journalist to care about, and it was really just astonishing that they were harping on troops in light of all of the things that had just played out. And in fact, the Karzai government has retrenched from every promise on good governance that he's made at any of these traveling roadshows. Now, we also have to be very clear that the Karzai that stands today is the Karzai that we have helped. I'm hoping that Daoud Yaqub will talk about this, but there is no paucity of culpability on the international community side with the grotesque and perhaps felonious way. I said felonious. That's probably not even a real word, but I can't. I struggle with words when I try to ponder the criminality with which we have tried to do reconstruction and the way in which we have tried to deliver aid. I thought it was astonishing that some 18 months ago, the U.S. Congress wanted to have a hearing on the ways in which contractors were paying the Taliban to get their products into Afghanistan. And one of the dudes called me up, and I was like, you have to be friggin' killing me. I mean, how do you expect these guys, if you want to outsource your flipping military operation and you don't want to have Marines protecting your convoys, how do you really think this crap is going to land up in Bagram or in Kandahar? Give me a break. And we've known this. So, and it just is a Libra, it's intolerable. So we have DEA pretending to care, and in fact it probably does care about counter-narcotics with Ahmed Wali Karzai. Well, the CIA is paying the guy, right? We want to say that we're worried about money getting to the Taliban through our supply lines, but there's really no way of getting around this. In fact, one of the things that just, I have to say I had a good laugh over it. Who was in a swivet over the 140 trucks that were getting blown up in Torcom and thought the end was near? Anyone? Anyone? Folks were screaming, oh my God, the G-locks are shut down. I said, just wait, the mafia is going to sort this out. By Monday, this thing is going to open up. Why? Because the Taliban want their money. Everyone wants their money in terms of the payoff structure that allows these trucks to move from Karachi to Bagram or to Kandahar. Think about it. If you were a dedicated counterinsurgent, you would be parking yourself there at Torcom and blowing up those things because they can't go anywhere. They're completely backed up. So the question is not, what do we do about it? The question is, why isn't this happening all the time if you had a dedicated insurgency? The fact is, everyone is being paid off. So it's very difficult for me to feel as if the occasional positive results that come out of Afghanistan at the tactical level, and to be clear, I have all confidence that Marines can kill every person that they have to kill, but that's really not the issue here. So if you look at clear, hold, build, transfer, clearing is hard because of the math, and Petraeus knows this very well because he's the one that wrote the math. It's also difficult because who are the insurgents? I'd like to get, anyone have felons in the family? I've got felons in the family. All right, wrong crowd with the felons, but I got them. So I've got several family members. They would have preferred said felon turn themselves over to the police as opposed to getting, shot dead. I was for the shot dead part, but that's just me. But you can imagine if you're the son or the daughter of a felon, your preference would be all else equal, that maybe they get a trial, maybe a mistrial because of evidence, misconduct, what have you, but certainly not being shot dead. And if you were to think about the complexity of the militant landscape, there's probably an element of truth in that. Yes, this Talib might be a complete scoundrel. Maybe he's, taken a wrong path, but he's still your uncle, your brother, your father, what have you. And you would probably prefer that they not wake up with a Hellfire missile on their head. So we have significant problems with how we think about clearing and trying to identify who the enemy is. And let me give you, I was in SWAT over the summer, and it really comes home when you actually talk to families. So I was hanging out in SWAT. They have their own Taliban. It's not the same Taliban, so I don't want to create this illusion that they're all the same. But I think there were some structural similarities. So my student, they live in a compound house. They have 3 houses on each corner, and then there's the mosque the Taliban took over. So my student at Lums University, one of the most liberal universities in Pakistan, played soccer with the Taliban, right? His uncle was an absolute pro-Talib supporter. His father was a defense attorney who are getting off people that tried to kill the Taliban. And on top of that, he introduced me to his cousin that said to me, I'm going to go kill Americans in Afghanistan. I'm training with Lashkar-e-Taiba. I'm like, well, good luck with that. I'll check in with me in a year and see how that works out for you. But I mean, so, but this is the household in SWAT, which is only relatively newly come under the sway of the Pakistan Taliban as a social movement. Imagine how complicated such a household might be if we were talking about a household in Helmand. So clearing is obviously very difficult. Holding is also difficult for very similar reasons. We have a lack of troops. We're trying to build Afghan national security forces. I don't need to bore you here with the problems with that, but as we all know, they're really quite numerous. And building, unfortunately, comes back to this civilian problem, which, again, doesn't need to be stressed again by me because the problems here are all too obvious. I will give Obama credit. Under the Obama administration, we now are having and Ciara can talk about this more, about 1,000 or so civilians, which is a huge improvement of the Bush administration, which had 300. In contrast, about 300 of the 1,000 in the Obama administration civilians are leaving Kabul and getting into the districts. In contrast, the 300 people during the Bush era tended to stay in Kabul. And then obviously transferring. Transferring is going to be huge if we stick to the criteria that we've laid out. And if that were really the case, I'm not even optimistic that 2014 is even reasonable. And what ultimately bugs me about all of this is that we're really deferring the most significant security threat, in my view, in the region, and that's Pakistan. And the reason, and this has bothered me, and it bothers me ever more with every single year, and the reason is really quite simple. As long as we have a counterinsurgency footing in Afghanistan, Pakistan remains a secondary theater. And let me just not put a fine point on this. We have given, I'm a sister of soldiers, this makes me so flipping angry. We've given them $19 billion. They support the Taliban, which kill our troops. Al-Qaeda is not killing our troops, the Pakistanis are. And nothing, absolutely nothing changes this. Lashkar-e-Taiba, which we all know from Mumbai, had been targeting us in Afghanistan since 2004. And we do absolutely nothing about this. Why? Because 90-ish%, depending on the actual number that you're looking at and the source, of our logistical supplies move through what's called the GLOC, the ground lines of control through Pakistan, right? So if we have troops that need to be supplied, we need Pakistan, which means that we will accept any level of perfidy, no matter how much money we've given them, because we can't do anything else. And it illuminates appalling interagency discord. So we can talk about DEA versus CIA when it comes to narcotics. Let's talk about CIA versus DOD when it comes to the Taliban or Al-Qaeda or Lashkar-e-Taiba. CIA wants more than anything to keep Pakistan's cooperation on Al-Qaeda. It's virtually the only cooperation we have on an enemy that we believe is an enemy versus an enemy that Pakistan believes is an enemy. But yet, even doing something as trivial as bombing with a drone a Lashkar-e-Taiba camp is absolutely impossible because the CIA is so worried the Pakistanis will freak out and renege on our support. So the complexities with Pakistan are just so maddening because Lashkar-e-Taiba is a group that far more than the Afghan Taliban could even aspire to threaten our security in ways that are both direct and in ways that are indirect. They remain the single most likely precipitant of an Indo-Pakistan conflict with all of the things that we worry about. Lashkar-e-Taiba has an international network, unlike the Taliban, who are not intimately linked to Al-Qaeda in ways in which we are constantly told. The Punjabi Deobandi groups in Pakistan are. So if you want to commit an act of violence in London, you don't go through the Taliban, you go to Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Jungvi or Sipe-Sabe, Pakistan. And we know this is important because if you look at the legislation, the Kerry-Lugar-Berman legislation, which tried to put a lot of money on the civilian side of Pakistan, but after a lot of outrage over Pakistan's persistent perfidy, it conditioned security assistance. Let me rehearse for you some of the requirements that are supposed to be placed upon Pakistan is a condition for its continuance of getting security assistance. It is supposed to stop, shut down, and eliminate the training bases of the Afghan Taliban, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed. This doesn't require some sexy metric that we know folks love to have in DOD on a PowerPoint slide. It is a simple yes or no question. The answer is clearly no. Have they done anything about anti-money laundering? No. And I could go through every single one of those criteria of Kerry-Lugar-Berman, and the answer is most clearly no in many cases, and on the most optimistic side, well, possibly marginally if I had a Quaalude. State Department hasn't even begun the process of certification. And why? Because any person that would stand before to do this would have to perjure themselves. Now, fortunately, there are no positive people that are willing to misrepresent reality before Congress, but even if there were, there is a waiver. So we never really have to hold Pakistan accountable to the requirements of our own legislation. So let me say in the 2 minutes that I have left, Vice President Biden was right. And I think history is going to prove that he was right. Had we taken a counterterrorism plus, had we refocused our strategic interest on the Al-Qaeda elements, not the Taliban, who are really a bunch of yokels with flip-flops. I mean, I just don't even understand the fixation of the Taliban. But he was right, in my view. Had we refocused and brought back why we're there in the first place, we would have realized that it's Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban, that's our problem. That Pakistan is actually more of an enemy, not a friend, right? I hate to say this, I'm a big supporter of Pakistan. I love the place dearly, but they are really screwing us. The Haqqani network, which they view as an asset, is killing our soldiers, right? So I cannot be persuaded by the foes of Vice President Biden that had we taken a counterterrorism plus approach that we would have had worse intelligence than we have today. Why would that be the case? When you stop engaging in the counterinsurgency offensive, which everyone hates anyway, why would your intelligence worsen rather than improve? Especially if you negotiated a strategic partnership with Karzai that allowed you to maintain a presence in important bases and continue the training function. But the most important thing that I'm going to argue in conclusion that posture would have done is it would have allowed us strategic space to get real about Pakistan, get real about Al-Qaeda, which is in Pakistan, get real on Al-Qaeda's allies that are in Pakistan, and then I would argue most importantly, try to find some way of genuinely enforcing our law to get Pakistan to act on these militant groups that are savaging not only the region, but ultimately our interests. And right now, we simply cannot do this with the present counterinsurgency posture that we've persisted in taking in Afghanistan. Thank you.